Our guest today is Jake Thomas. For the listeners who don't know, Jake is a former U.S. Marine and now lifestyle coach through his marquee, Life Like Jake, and the host of the very successful podcast, Sick, Scared, and Stupid. You can check out Jake's background story on his first appearance of the Primal Foundations podcast in episode 12. Jake, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tony. It's good to be here. It's good to see you again. Talking off screen, I said you're looking leaner, still smiling. So I don't want to say meaner, but you look leaner, noticeably leaner. You've been doing something right for sure
I
since I
appreciate
last
it.
saw you.
I always said, I'm trying to be like you, boss. Just shredded like a Julian salad over there. Uh, yeah. So, man, last time, like we actually did, well, I was on your podcast, but even before, like episode 12. So you're like, this is over a year ago. You're an OG
Yeah,
for the Primal
yeah,
Foundations.
yeah, man. That was a good time. We were both still kind of cracking into certain spaces and trying to figure things out and poke the bear, so to speak, being part of this resistance underground movement that's still kicking, and then getting to see you and meet you for the first time in Austin at Hack Your Health, the event through KetoCon. And, I remember laughing with you about that and how you went to the same barbecue place like 3 days in a row, not for barbecue, but for steak, for people that don't know, like steak, whole steaks, and like a ribeye in this case, is not something you normally find at a barbecue shop or shack. It's usually cuts of beef, pound of this, quarter pound of that, whatever, ribs and sausage and stuff like that. But that one place in particular downtown in Austin, Cooper's, that you were like, dude, you got to
Yes.
go to this place and get the ribeye. And I was like, of course, the outer towner is telling me to go to the place downtown on Congress. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it's like a tourist trap, right? Like right there in the heart of downtown. And it's man, talk about eat the words. Like Cooper's is good barbecue, but like that ribeye is absolutely nails out of this world. So once I had it, I understood why you went 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I have to credit James Lieben, the carnivorous, because he went there before and he's like, you gotta have the ribeye here. And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, this is in the downtown area. This is not
Right,
like
right, right,
real Texas
right,
barbecue, but
right,
we
right.
get there and I was shocked. I went back again with our boy Casey Ruff, and
Yeah,
then he left for the airport, and I was like, kind of waiting around town. I'm like, I texted him, like, guess where I'm at? He's like, you're not at Cooper's again. I go, yes, I'm at Cooper's again. Three times in
three
a
times.
weekend, but it was definitely well worth it. It was super cool to meet. Like doing podcasts is great, and you get to kind of have a little bit of connection. But like we got to meet each other at Hack Your Health. We got to eat, we got to hang
Yep,
out.
yep.
When I walked in there, it was my first one. So I said I just interviewed Reynolds again,
Oh,
and
nice.
I saw him. He's like the first person. I always joke he's like the mayor of that whole thing. Like everybody knows him.
Yeah,
And I like hugging him. I turn around, I see you, and then I see Casey, then I see James. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like it's just super cool to get like all those like-minded people in there and to just rub elbows with each other, talk to somebody new, talk to somebody that you've been wanting to talk to. There's like people, there's heroes there for everybody. So it
yeah,
was just
yeah,
a really great experience.
yeah. I had a blast, man, and I was fortunate to bring my mother, who you met, and it's a big deal for me because she is a big reason why I got into this whole thing in the first place. My 7 years ago, my mother was given this really dismal osteoporosis. I don't know, I should say, let me rephrase that. She got a really bad bone density scan score. Like she had very negative bone density scores. And so her osteoporosis had really kind of taken over. And her doctor, who administered the exam and kind of gave her the prognosis after the fact, was like, you're really not looking good. I'd give you about a year to live. Now, I believe how that was interpreted or how he meant it to be was like if you took a fall or if you had a break of some kind, it would really be bad for you given the state of your bone density right now. I mean, I want to say she was like -4 or something around there, like really, really in a bad spot, definitely in the critically red area. And so when my mother, when your mother tells you like, hey, I was given a year to live, and I'm like, what? Like, hey, I've got some bad news, or I've got some pretty heavy news. My doctor just gave me a year to live based on dot 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 dot. You don't even hear the dot 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 part. All you hear is year to live. And I was like, whoa, hold on, mom. Like it sends off a lot of alarms in your head and really makes you come to the moment. of being afraid, and I was like, I can't lose my mother right now. Like, I need you, mom. Like, I need you in life. And no, like, it was denial. This can't be, it does not compute kind of thing. And then I started listening and understanding the why behind it, and her, in fact, having this, very serious case of osteoporosis. And so that just put me on a mission of like, what can I do? What can we do? What's the remedy? What's the fix? Like the Marine, you kind of mentioned that earlier. The Marine kicks into me and goes like, enemy, where? Search, find, kill, destroy. Like, what do we need to do to fix this problem? Which is not always the answer. But in this case, I was definitely like, locate, close with, and destroy the enemy, for sure. And so I was already experimenting a lot with diets and nutrition. I've been competitively and professionally bodybuilding for quite a while at this point, and was doing various types of bro dieting, and if it fits your macros, and standard American and typical bodybuilding style dieting, and even gotten into vegetarianism and veganism for a couple of years. And preceding her diagnosis or prognosis, I'd started to get bips on carnivore eating. I'd done keto in the past, but a friend of mine put.
Ooh, we lost you for a second. No, you're frozen.
This, listen to this. They're all podcasts and videos and things,
Ooh.
throughout.
Can you go one more? Just go circle back. Like you just like did a quick freeze and then you were good. So you said
Yeah.
like you started researching carnivore and these blips were coming up. That's where you kind of you did a little cut, but pick it up from there.
So I started researching, the carnivore diet, and I was through a friend of mine. He's like, read this, watch this, listen to this. And I was like, yeah, dude, I've done keto before. And he's like, no, man, it's not keto. No vegetables, no fruits, no avocados, no chocolate, no nuts, like just meat, just animals, fish, seafood, eggs. So I was like, all right, whatever, man. I'll read, I'll watch, I listen. And I did. And made a lot of sense. I was not a vegan nor a vegetarian for the ethics of animals or for the environmental consciousness. I dated a girl that was a vegetarian. She and I, in turn, became vegan together. That was my reasoning for that. It was never about the two other reasons, as mentioned. So for me, it was actually pretty easy to abandon veganism and become a carnivore, so to speak. People hear that and they're like, oh my God, you went from vegan to carnivore, even though a lot of people do that. I was never having to disassociate from some type of moral reason. I did it, like I said, because this girl I was dating was a vegetarian, and we together explored that plant-based world and then became vegans together. So the more I listened, the more I watched, the more I read, the more I was curious. And when I finally took this, first 30-day plunge into it, like the results to me were undeniable. Like how I felt, what I was able to do with so little, so to speak. As a vegan bodybuilder, I had like my pillbox, Tony, was like I can't even make the dimensions of it, how big it was, right? I had, 5 different doses for each day, and I had all 7 days. So I had the five box by 7. So it's a 35 box, right? And I had X amount of pills per day. So, 5 times a day, whether I was taking this supplement, amino acid, right? Because it doesn't exist, a couple other micronutrients and minerals and vitamins throughout the course of the day, 5 times. And some other like bacterial cleansers and, little droppers that I'm doing things with on top of the other supplements I'm taking, protein powders, amino acids, things that do not exist in the plant kingdom that you have to source outside of it in order to create and get, I should say, obtain the macros and micros that you want, particularly as a bodybuilder or as a fitness model, where you're trying to account for those macros and the ratios that you want them. But the fact that you do, they don't exist in the natural world as a vegan. So you have to have processed foods. You have to have supplements, whether it's the vitamins, the droppers, the protein powders, whatever. Add on top of that, all the food is processed. I was not a raw vegan, so I'm eating, tofu and tempeh and satay and everything else that I can get to create protein with. But at the same time, I'm using the supplements and the vitamins to get things in the ratios that I wanted. All the while, not concerned or really aware of like the heavy metals or the other types of mold or toxins that I'm being exposed to through the processing of all these things. And I'm just like, it's it's vegan, it's good for me, cool, whatever. When I went carnivore, all that went away. No more pills, no more, 5x7 vitamin box. And I was like, damn, like I was so proud of this thing. It's cool. It's color coded. It's like it's like a habitual thing.
Mm-hmm.
No more of that. Like that was first. No more droppers. No more, scoops of amino acids. No more BCAAs. No more, amino acids, BCAAs. No more protein powders. No more, foods and wrappers and like I said, tofu, tempeh, satay, whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's just eggs, steak, ground beef, bacon. Like that was what I ate pretty much for those first 30 days, where it was a lot of steak, a lot of eggs and bacon and burgers.
And
And I was
that's important.
shocked.
Yeah, what you're saying is because you get this a lot of people look to other people. They're like, well, so and so's vegan and they're this or they're that or they've achieved this. It's really hard to do, like you're saying. Like, not to say that people can't do those things, but there is a lot of supplementation. It's a lot of extra work and things. Again, if it's a moral thing or you really think you're doing it for your own health, whatever it may be. But there are athletes out there like yourself at that moment in time where you wanted to do it vegan or a vegetarian, but it is a lot of food. You don't know where it's coming from. It's packaged, it's processed, and there's so many supplements. It is daunting. I like just you talking about it, I'm like, man, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah. And it is. It really is. And you hit it well and said like it's not, I don't want to say right or wrong. I don't want to be that polarizing where I'm saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm just saying what I went through, what I experienced, and comparing the differences. And if someone finds value in that or they're able to relate to that, cool. But I'm explaining these things as they were, not how I perceive them or what my opinion is, but like I was a vegan. I was eating these things in order to achieve the results I wanted athletically. I had to supplement because again, these things did not exist in the ratios that I needed them in order to eat and adhere to my macros, right? Very specific. Same thing in the if it fits your macros world. Well, when you're not a vegan, you're wide open. You can drink, isopure 50-gram protein drinks that have nothing else but this liquefied protein. And you can cheat and say, all right, I'm going to go eat a bunch of Skittles and Sour Patch Kids and watch a movie. And like, it'll still fit in my macros. Then I'll just down these egg whites and whatever, and it'll work out. It will, and it can, because I've done it plenty of times. I would eat Popeyes oftentimes during bodybuilding preps because people are like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, dude, you get the not the fried, but the blackened chicken strips, skip the sauces, get the dirty rice with the green beans, skip the mashed potatoes, skip the biscuit. There you go. There's your meal. There's your carbs, there's your protein, there's your vegetable for volume to fill you up. And it works like a charm. Now, you're not accounting for the micros in there, the vitamins that are going to be all out of whack because of the processing and the inclusion of those synthetic versions of some of those micronutrients. So how you're going to feel is not necessarily going to equate to how good you might look, but in this carnivore sense, and which is the ultimate, elimination diet by way of absolute whole foods, whole, complete, real, single foods, right? There's no ingredients to them. Eggs are eggs. Ground beef is ground beef. Ingredient, if it were even in a package, ground beef, ingredients, eggs, bacon. Like, okay, maybe bacon, you got to look forward to make sure there's no nitrates, no extra additives and
Mm-hmm.
sugars and whatnot, salts and different spices. But for the most part, it's like ingredients, ribeye steak, ingredients. Like you're eating single ingredient foods as opposed to foods made of ingredients. And that was huge to me, huge aha moment. Second one was, as a vegan athlete, using the toilet a lot of bathroom time, a lot of evacuation by way of, I'm thinking, well, it's because I'm an athlete. My metabolism's really high. I need to use the toilet 3, 4, 5 times a day sometimes because I'm an athlete. Nah, like,
Mm-hmm.
no, dude, that's all waste. That's all discard. That's all what cannot be utilized or ingested, thus it has to be discarded. Just thinking about like fiber and the types of, soluble versus non-soluble fiber and things that can be ingested and broken down as opposed to things that can only be discarded. So consuming all those things, my body is extracting, having to really particularize the foods it's ingesting in order to extract these little bits of nutrients. So all this stuff would come into it, and the digestive system is having to go, okay, just this, and all this can go away.
Mm-hmm.
So between like my duodenum, my jejunum, my ileum, like all these parts and phases of the digestive tract, and some of which are incorporating storage, some are, you know, discerning which micronutrients are for what and what macronutrients are for what. They're like, whoa, like we just need that, and all this other stuff can go. Whereas when I became a carnivore, bowel movement frequency changed a lot. By changed a lot, I mean really fell off. You know, sure, sometimes you can have the runs for a couple of days or have some, uncomfortable bowel movements in your transitional period just because you're taking in a lot more fat and your colon is cleaning itself out a bit because now you don't have a lot of substance there to kind of hold some things and you're going to just be kind of pretty fluid. You might have that. But eventually, once your body becomes used to what it's ingesting and really understands the processing of that, you're not going to be discarding as much because you're going to be retaining essentially everything that you're consuming. The bioavailability of what you're consuming is basically 100. There's no more having to discern what is being ingested can actually be utilized. What do we need to discard? There is no discard. There's no casing. There's no husk. There's no cellulose. There's no fiber. There's none of that. There's no roughage. It's all protein and fat and cellular, volume, which is what we are. So our body's able to recognize that very easily. The familiarity is very simple: ingest, consume, utilize, and then minimal discard, to the point now where I've gone the longest I've gone is 11 days without a bowel movement. And people are like, what? That's crazy. You've got
You
to be
gotta
sick.
be you gotta be constipated then. That's exactly what they're gonna go to.
And I'm not. And it's weird at first
Yeah.
when you're like, man, I didn't get up this morning and do my manly, first evacuation of the day. And then
That's a good way
again
to put
the
it.
next
Yeah.
day. And then again the next day. I'm like, am I losing? Like, am I getting soft? Is this making me soft? Am I losing
Yeah.
my manliness because I'm not getting up and doing my morning glory?
Mm-hmm.
No. And I was just like, man, that was a real aha moment to me. Again, similarly to the supplements and the vitamins and all that, the fact that I didn't need those things now. And the fact that I wasn't evacuating so frequently, I was like, man, these are cool things that, again, it was starting to dispel my opinion and my feelings and promote what was actually going on.
Yeah, I forgot who said it, but we were talking about, again, bowel movements does come up in the carnivore space because it is a transition from going anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day to not going for 2 to 3 days. And everybody
Yeah.
thinks it's a crazy thing. And I forgot who said it, but they're like, nobody's winning the award for the most amount of bowel movements. Like, there's no award out there for that. So,
Yeah.
but we are utilizing a lot of the nutrition and it's bioavailable for you versus, like you were saying, the excretion of everything else. And that's one thing, is because if I wave off of carnivore, like at any point, like I will be going to the bathroom more often. And then when I'm
Yeah.
on carnivore, I won't. So it's like, obviously that my body is going to be taking in these nutrients very efficiently. And also I don't have to buy a ton of toilet paper. I swear to God, I
Huge
still
one.
have, dude,
Huge
I
one.
don't have to buy, I like a roll lasts months in my place.
Facts.
But then circling back to your mom, so she's doing mostly carnivore, or if not all carnivore, and then you're
Yep.
also doing some strength training with her, like
Yep.
all of those things of this lifestyle coaching. And this was 7 years ago when she got that diagnosis.
Yeah. So 7 years ago was the diagnosis. And for several years after that, she was doing a lot of things on her own. So she was working with some other people, trainers wise. Her nutrition, my mother's nutrition was never bad per se. She's born and raised in Mexico and grew up in an old world kind of pick it, pull it, kill it, eating foods that are ingredients, not ingredients that create foods, not foods made of ingredients. So we didn't have sodas in the house growing up, didn't have Lunchables going to school. We had like, whole foods for lunches. I would say like the craziest processed things, though maybe they're not the healthiest now, but still I would take them over a lot of other things. I was the kid that would show up to school with peanut butter, banana, celery, and honey sandwich on like whole grain or 7 grain or sourdough. And like, when you're in second grade, nobody wants to trade you for that. Like it's the worst currency in the world as far as in school stuff, right? Because like all my friends had Lunchables, pizza, kids cuisine, like all these,
Snack
all the
packs.
cool
Yeah.
snack packs, dude. Gushers. I remember when Gushers came out, fruit roll-ups. I was like, oh my God, these are amazing.
Yeah.
Anybody want to trade for this peanut butter, banana, honey sandwich on sourdough with celery? And people are like, yeah, no.
No,
So
thank
my
you.
mother raised us well. She grew up well, but still something was missing. Something was off. Clearly, that osteoporosis, it happened somehow. So I started auditing what she's doing, how she's living, how she's eating. I love the people she was working with, but the work that she was doing as far as in the physical training that she was undertaking was not in the interest of combating this osteoporosis. Just like a metabolic panel. People that go get lipids done, people that go take blood tests. A blood test, metabolic panel, a drug screen, whatever, a lipid, testosterone even is a test. A test you can either study for and do well on, or a test you show up and take and you get the grade you deserve. Most people show up and just take the test and they get the grade they deserve. And when they're upset about, oh my God, my testosterone's so low, or like, oh my God, my cholesterol's so high, or like, why is my A1C? You got the grade you deserve based on the work you're putting in. The test isn't out to get you, but just the same, you can study, prepare for that test, and you will get a favorable score based on the work you put in. So for my mother, I said, okay, after a few years of this and not seeing too much of an improvement, her body composition was not as ideal as it should have been. She's in great health. You met my mother. She's got good genes. I was like, we're not doing something right. Are you sure these people are working out this way? Are you sure you're eating this way, Mom? And finally, I just got frustrated enough with it, to be honest. I said, okay, you're working with me now, Mom. You're training with me. You're eating with me. I am going to monitor you. I'm going to put you in my app with my coaching program with my people so I can monitor you and see what's going on. And sure enough, a lot of it was not optimal dietary adherence. So in combination with strength training, two biggest things that, are often misunderstood, whether it's to lose weight or reduce body fat or to gain weight and, improve lean body muscle, you have to give in order to get. If you want to lose weight, if you want to go into a calorie deficit, if you want to reduce your amount of overall percentage body fat to improve your body composition, you're going to have to give by way of maybe having some hunger pangs, maybe having some irritability, maybe having some brain fog, maybe having some days where you just don't feel great, having a lot of urges to want to eat, temptations. Yeah, you're going to have to give in order to get what you want. For gaining weight, putting on size and mass, you're going to have to eat. And that can be uncomfortable. It could, I've never eaten this much. I'm full. Like, well, if you want to gain weight, mass, put on muscle, you're going to have to eat in order to do that. You're going to have to eat the amount that's required in order to get there. On top of that, or combined with, you got to train the right way. So if it's to reduce that percentage of body fat or to lose weight or to improve your, again, kind of metabolic health and just body composition, or to increase that, you have to give in order to get. So my mother was doing a lot of activity, but she wasn't eating in a optimal alignment with what kind of activity she was doing. And the activity she was doing was not promoting the best sense of like recruitment for, let's say, things to combat osteoporosis, like stem cells, like some type of regeneration to her bone, to improve that density. So I said, Mom, we need to pump steel and we need to eat hearty and heavy. And so I was already a year into the diet and I was like, Mom, I really think you should try this. Let's give it a roll. Let's cut out the tortillas. And by tortillas, my mother is, again, very healthy. And it's just part of the culture coming from Mexico. She ate corn tortillas, not flour. But still, these are not necessarily promoting what we're after. I was like, Mom, we need to really get the protein in. We really need to really get the fat in, but we just need these good nutrient dense food sources, these wholesome places to where we can really get this red meat that's going to be loaded with creatine, that's going to really pump your ATP, really get that adenosine triphosphate, the energy center, the body's optimal energy currency. is ATP. And not having enough protein, not having enough good quality bioavailable sources of creatine, a la red meat, the greatest, we're not really pumping that ATP. So she's not getting the energy she needs. She's not being able to recruit the muscle growth, stimulation, and recovery. She's in need of, same thing with the bones, because the diet wasn't adequate and it was not complemented with the right type of training. So we started to incorporate heavy and intense resistance training several days a week, along with monitoring strictly her amount of food. So much that I remember the first day when she was low on her fat, she had hit her protein, but was in need of fat. She had to take down like 6 spoonfuls of butter. And the next morning she was like, I can't do that again with all that butter to hit the numbers. I was like, Mom, you can, but you don't want to. So let's make sure we prepare better so that we're not blindsided by that and then have to do that again. But in order to hit our numbers, we're going to do what it takes. And sure enough, 2 years later, scores reversed. By reverse, I say drastically improved to where her -4s and 5s are now just teetering around -1s. So she's still not in positive green, but she's no longer in critically red. And she's almost touching the surface to break even. And she even ran her first Murph workout this past Memorial Day. Yeah. And she hikes in around the 20-pound vest pretty much every day. She's sprinting now, doing like intervals and lengthening her sprint distances, even from what she started with were just like 5-second intervals. And now she's up to like 45-second sprint intervals. But lots of farmers carries, lots of deadlifts, lots of squats, lots of bench press, lots of heavy, low rep range compound movements coupled with nutrient dense, red meat, creatine rich food sources, osteoporosis. See you later.
The combination, and I think this is aesthetics aside, right? Let's ditch that out the way. But getting people metabolically healthy and strong, like those are the two best things you can do. And in tandem, the one other piece is with that nutrition, like the inflammation is, we don't realize how shitty we feel until we go to a diet like this. And when the inflammation goes away, like, that knee pain, that hip, whatever, not to say that you're never ever going to have aches and pains, but for myself and for others, I feel like once you get that inflammation out and you're able to like feel better mentally and physically, you're able to train better. You just can wrap your head around doing this lifestyle a little bit more. And it's just so powerful. And how old is your mom now?
She'll be she's 72 now. So yeah, she'll be 73
And
next year.
she's lifting weights, eating
Yeah,
steaks, running
yeah,
sprints.
yeah,
She,
yeah.
yeah, she is an absolute sweetheart. You tell her I said hi, by the way, as well.
I
But
will.
no, she was great. And it's amazing what you guys can do. I mean, again, 1 year to live versus, 7 years later, and she's crushing it. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
man. Yeah, and a great point about inflammation too. We take for granted not feeling bad. There's a big difference between feeling good and not feeling bad. Not feeling bad means that you feel good, FYI, to everybody. Because we all know when we feel bad. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
when you don't feel good or we don't feel well. Like, man, I feel like shit. I'm sore. I don't have energy. Like we are the first to complain when things go wrong. Like same thing. Like take service for example. Like on a flight. Hey, when the flight goes well, everything's smooth. We had a normal departure. There was no delay. Great takeoff. Great service during the flight. Great landing. Like perfect experience. We don't say anything about it. We don't take the survey. We piss off. Like no. But by God, if that plane is delayed, we're all on Twitter. God damn you, Delta. Damn. Blah, blah. If there's luggage issues, if there's something in flight experience that goes wrong, we're stuck on the runway. Like we're all just complaining. But when it's good, like we don't say anything. Our health is very similar. It's rare that we praise how good we feel.
Mhm.
We do it, don't get me wrong, but it's rare because most people aren't going to do it every single day. Like, oh my God, I feel amazing. Blah, blah, blah. Like, but when we feel bad, boy, that's news. It's news to us. It's news to people around us. we can't wait to tell you about it. Like, dude, I feel like shit today. Like, oh my God, I don't feel good. Man, we love to share that negativity. So I say we take for granted not feeling bad, because when you feel bad, you know it. But it's almost like you forget what not feeling bad is like, and that's actually feeling good. Not feeling bad is feeling good. So not having that inflammation, not having that issue, that chronic knee pain, or the brain fog, or some type of mental clarity, or issues with sleep, like when all those things start going away, it's not that you've gone past the point of status quo and now you're in the advanced phase of feeling good. No, you're this is normal. We are
Mhm.
not becoming superhuman. My mother is not becoming a superhuman. That's normal. She had regressed all the way down to where she was. She had fallen back. She was hindered. Her living experience was hindered by the degeneration of what she was dealing with. That's what most of us deal with now. How we
Mhm.
feel, the depression, the anxiety, the disorders or disruptions that we all go through is like drag that we've just gotten used to. So when people heal around us and improve their lives around us, we see them as superior. It's like, no, dude, I'm not superior to you. You're just behind and below by your own choosing for the most part. It's like in a sprint, 100-meter dash, for example. And my track coach of mine in college told me this, and I'll never forget it. He's like, "You ever watch the 100-meter?" He's like, and you see the winner pull away. I was like, "Yeah, totally." He's like, "It's like the guy's not pulling away; the other people are falling off." In a race like that, it's about perfection, right? Like you mess up the start, you lose. You come up too soon, you lose. You don't stay low enough, you lose. I love the 100-meter. Even though Noah Lyles in this past Olympics had not the best start, was still able to come from behind. So rarely this happens. Statistics do have fallibility, and this one is just a hair of it. But for the
Mhm.
most part, 99% of the time, the winner is the person that just holds it and everybody else falls off. So it's not that he's getting faster, it's just that he hits top end, holds that speed, and doesn't fall off. We are not becoming superhuman. It's just that everybody else, man, is in such a deficit and has perceived that to be normal, that we've accepted it, and that everything else around us is seeming, or rather, when it's something is better than that, we're like, man, Tony fucking, he's in great shape. Like this guy's a superhuman. It's like, nah, dog, I just took off the parachute.
Yeah, and I always talk about this too. The cards are stacked against us. Like it's a thing where the perception is, oh, like your mother's since her 70s and she's lifting weights? No way. That can't be
Yeah,
possible.
yeah,
Oh, like I eat this way, right? This is the American diet. Like my grandfather lived to whatever. So like I could eat like he did, kind of thing. And it's just like, all right, the kids growing up today, I feel bad. Like I feel bad for kids growing up today because the landscape of their food and their choices is very doctored up for them. And in schools, outside of schools, in the home, and people are perceived like this is healthy because it says, oh, whole grain. This is healthy because it's heart healthy cereal. Give me a
yeah.
freaking break. Right. So I think, again, you were mentioning earlier, this grassroots thing that we are doing, it's catching on. It's starting to gain momentum, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and I can tell you from the front line right now, I'm working on a second master's right now at University of Texas in Austin in nutritional science to precede my doctorate in nutritional science, and I'm listening to it, from the horse's mouth, having to evaluate the material objectively, doing a lot of case studies, epidemiological studies, a lot of reviews of RCTs and randomized controlled trials, and just peer reviews over and over and over, and read, analyze, summarize, read, analyze, summarize. So it's like some of which I definitely don't agree with, and it's like really putting me in a conflicting place. But then when I realize, like, hey, you're just reporting the data as it is, take your emotions out of it. It's okay. Your opportunity will come. But places like the World Cancer Research Fund, the American Cancer Society, the American Medical Association, the American Health Association, the American Heart Association, they rather have put forth so much information for such a long time, decades, generations even, for them to change their positions on things. I mean, for you and I, Tony, it's like we're single people, we're individuals. So we represent families, we have spheres of influence, friends, clients, people that come to us, confide in us, look up to us, whatever, are influenced by us. But break it down, it's just us. Our decisions are going to affect us alone, regardless of what's around us. It's going to affect us alone. We're not an organization like the AMA, the ACS, or any of those others that I mentioned. We haven't written hundreds of thousands of journals or peer reviews, or had hundreds of thousands of case studies with millions of people, to which we've then given synopses and promoted or dispelled or disseminated information to be able to create a narrative or a position that we stand behind, and then to which millions of people adhere to. Caregivers that promote it, that forward it, and then patients that listen and adhere. For them to have to change that information, for you and I to say, hey, I'm a vegan today, I'm a carnivore tomorrow, fine. But for them to do that, what about all those millions of people who listen to that advice otherwise? All those hundreds of thousands of doctors and practitioners that have taken that, given it to patients, all of the people that have subscribed over the years, the decades, the generations, to the way they've said is right, or this is the best way to fight cancer, to prevent cancer, to reduce risk, to be as healthy as possible, to combat diabetes, to try to stop metabolic syndrome. Like, we're talking about a Goliath of a consciousness. So yeah, we are in this very little grassroots movement, and it is a Herculean effort, but I'm very grateful to be where I am, because I'm in the thick of it, as far as in hearing the information and hearing the side that it's coming from, which is fine. And I see tremendous upside, because it's not trying to necessarily totally demonize the other side, but simply just offer a different perspective. Example, this morning I had my weekly live Q&A, and one of my clients was asking me about a report that I had shared with them. And I'm sharing all of my schoolwork and findings and everything I'm working on with my community, so that they can actually see, like, look, this is literally right from the teaching pulpit. Here's my breakdown. Here's what I had to do. Here's what I think about it. Here's the truth behind it. Evaluate for yourselves. And she was asking, like, well, what do you think about that study? Because it talks a lot about red meat as being a increaser of risk for cancer. And like, the report I had or rather the subject I had to work on, was how the inclusion of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains helps reduce the risk of cancer. And when I got that originally, I was like, oh God, typical. Like, great. I was like,
you feel targeted. You're like, I think they're targeting me.
No, email my professor. I was like, is there any way I could do this one on processed food removal instead? Just because I was like, oh God, not this one. But then I was like, you know what? It's not about my opinion. Just find the report, find a report, a peer review, a journal, and report on that. It's inclusion, or it's what it includes. It's like, fine, okay, I can do this. So reading that, I'm like, God, this is crazy. Like, what they're evaluating it on, they're saying, to not consume it based on this and that. And she is asking me, my client, well, how would you, how do you respond to that? And I said, well, because you have no other information about these people, these patients, the participants. We've got 10,000 people ranging from 18 to 65, have no idea what they look like, no idea what their activity levels are like, no idea what the rest of their diets are really like. Mm-hmm. And all you're just hearing is that you're talking about including red meat just out of nowhere on that. So these people could be sick internally. These people could be sick physically. These people could be, completely sedentary, disabled, who knows? And all of a sudden you're going to just drop red meat into that and blame the red meat as an issue for causing having a greater risk for cancer. Well, if it's to the standard American diet and adding more red meat to a diet that is comprised of almost 60% of their carbohydrates coming from processed foods, rather 60% of the diet coming from processed foods, 57, I believe it's 57% of calories of the standard American diet come by way of refined carbohydrates and otherwise processed foods. 57%. So yes, if you add red meat to that, could it be problematic? Sure. I agree with that. And that is what these studies and findings propose, because that's what they're based on. That's what they evaluate. They evaluate the people ad valorem. What are they consuming? They're consuming a standard American diet. And if 57 to 60% of their calories are coming from refined sugar or carbohydrate sources and processed foods, then yeah, adding red meat to that is going to be probably problematic, because the cancer probability risk is not coming from the meat. It's coming from the other things, from the processed foods. And sure enough, my classmates who had processed food reduction as their findings report, and as far as in efforts to reduce cancer risk, found crazy increases in probability and risk for people that consumed, primarily by way of carcinogens, even though red meat is also classified as class 1, class 2, depending on what type. But to think about that is dumbfounding. I give an example of the Brazilian steakhouse all the time. So right now, we're breathing nitrogen. 78% of the air we breathe is nitrogen, not oxygen. People think like, I need some O2. It's like, no, dude, you need nitrogen more than anything. Nitrogen is what we breathe, the majority of. Nitrogen is an essential part of life. It is an essential molecule. The atoms that it is without them, we cannot breathe, right? Oxygen is critical as well, but without nitrogen, there's no life in plants and air, in the ground, in the soil, and in animals, and ourselves. Nitrogen alone is quite inert. But when you combine nitrogen, 2 of them, with 1 toluene, you got TNT. Right? So by itself, it's inert. But when you take 2 of these suckers and combine it with the toluene, you've got this beautiful, combustible, flammable, explosive, volatile compound of trinitrotoluene. Brazilian steakhouse. Tony, every time we go there, the meat makes me so sick. No, Jake, the meat did not make you sick. Those 5 baskets of pão de queijo you had to start off the meal, the triple whipped polenta and mashed potatoes, and then all the spiced and sugared plantains fried in vegetable oil you smashed, and then all the shit you got from the salad bar, the double dessert that you got, plus the 2 bottles of wine you drank, that plus the meat, you're right. That made you sick. Meanwhile, Tony ate just picanha, beef ribs, some lamb chops, a couple of sausages, and he's ready to run a marathon afterwards. I'm ready to roll over in a wheelbarrow and die.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how I'm going to drive home. And you're like, all right, dude, I'll see you later. I'm high on life. It's not the meat. So the same thing from those studies. It's not fair to blame meat as causing a higher probability of cancer risk when all those other things are on board. Back to that TNT thing. Nitrogen alone, meat, is not going to be the harmful thing. But when you combine it, 2 of them with toluene.
That, first and foremost, that was the most elegant way to say that rant. Was very eloquently put. I love that. It was way
Thanks,
better than
man.
I've heard anybody talk about the topic. But, you're right. I mean, some of these majority of the studies are just epidemiological, and it's all like survey based. I think I had this. I think I had that. In
Yep.
combination, we don't know the activity level. We don't know what's going on with the person. And then we're just going to cherry pick a lot of the data to just prove the points. But yeah, very, very well said. And I think that's amazing too. I didn't know you were going back to school. So you're going to get an additional doctorate, or?
I'm a glutton for education in the best way. And I have a master's in business, and currently doing my second master's, but in nutritional science.
Gotcha.
But I'm preceding the doctorate with this. This is kind of like my segue into the doctoral. So I'll be starting that hopefully the fall next year. I get accepted with all my radical idealisms and whatnot. But yeah, that's the truth, man. Is you can't blame things that are, like you said, kind of cherry picked, where you've got epidemiological studies showing correlation, not necessarily causation. And then, things like FFQs or food frequency questionnaires. You know this working with individuals one-on-one. Having people log their food, count calories, macros, what'd you eat, how much was it? Like, we messed up all the time, even me, you. Like, during competition, during performance, I'm prepping for a race, prepping for a show, miss a corner or cut a corner here and there, miss a detail, like maybe. Oh, so you're telling me when we got like 100,000 person survey, like how good is the adherence? And that's even one of the flaws written in the abstract or in the synopsis of the studies. A lot of them is, it's difficult to gauge the accuracy based on the input from the participants because, there is they are susceptible to fallibility. Well, duh. And then on the food frequency questionnaire, like how many of this, how much of that, the list is like massive. Like there could be all kind of like variables in there. Whereas, there's very few in the carnivore world, on the low carb, zero carb, keto world. Like one of the assessments that I did was comparing 3 diet types in their relationship to cancer risk or increased risk, reduced risk or increased risk. And they were a Mediterranean diet, a ketogenic diet, and a plant-based diet. And the study concluded that the Mediterranean diet was the best as far as an overall reduction for cancer risk. Like, okay, that's fair. This study. The reason they dispelled the ketogenic diet, though, the findings did show substantial reduction in overall tumor size, ding, 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 and improved metabolic health to the body, ding, ding, ding. Not enough information studying has been done in order for us to be able to promote this as a likely place for reduced cancer risk. Plant-based diet, a healthy version of the plant-based diet was proved to promote reduction by way of I want to say it was like 12%. I forget exactly. Healthy. And then they went on to say, and I love this part, in contrast, unhealthy versions of the plant-based diet were shown to show substantial increased risk in cancer. And I was like, imagine that. So back to veganism, vegetarianism, and processed foods. I have mad respect for the raw vegan. Mad respect. Because that is a lion heart of a commitment. Mad respect to the raw vegan. If you're not a raw vegan and you're a vegan, or you're a plant-based eater and you're not a raw plant-based eater, get off your high horse and not thinking that you're not consuming tons of processed foods, because you are. To create the foods you eat, they are processed, literally. Whether you think they're ethically, environmentally, or morally sound or right, to create them, they're made in a factory, in a lab, in a plant, processed to be packaged, boxed, and wrapped, whatever, for you to ingest. Whereas your raw vegans, who I, like I said, respect the hell out of, that's as is. Pick it and pull it. Pick it, pull it, eat it. That's it. God bless you. So this healthy versus unhealthy version of a plant-based diet for cancer risk, reduced or increased, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Sure, less risk. Bet you that's based on their healthy version, less processed version, versus higher risk, increased risk. Yeah, because they're probably eating a bunch of wrapped garbage that's full of heavy metals, mold toxins, its own version of carcinogens, and God knows what else.
Yeah.
But yeah, my job right now is just to report the findings as they are until I'm given, a research forum to kind of further delve into these things, which, like I said, I'm not trying to prove law and create dogma and religion. The job of science, the job of a scientist, is not to prove law, but to constantly test, to try and disprove your hypothesis. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to test in efforts to disprove the hypothesis. But we have to compare it to the currently, acknowledged rhetoric and information in order to test it, because I'm testing that hypothesis, same time testing mine. So it'll be this, ongoing tennis match of does this work? Does that not work? We'll see what they say. What do you guys think? And we'll see how it goes.
Dude, you're hitting the nail on the head. I was gonna say that processed, yes, but ultra processed, ultra palatable, easy to consume, and over consume these products,
Oh yeah.
it's crazy. And I know because we've chatted too, like, I've had a stint of veganism for like 2 years, and it got to a point where I couldn't eat enough. And then when I did eat those things, literally my gut was just like, oh my God. Like I just felt like crap. I didn't feel
Yep.
right. And we talked about the inflammation and all those things, but uh I know we're kind of strapped for time, but the one thing I want to kind of end with, there's going to be a part 3 to this because we have so much to cover.
Love
But
it, dude. Yeah, man.
um, I wanted to kind of talk about your coaching, kind of plug that as well. Uh, for clients or people, like just kind of the people that are coming to you, what are like the top 3 essential steps someone can take to become healthier, or just kind of take their health into their own hands a little bit? So when you see people come in, whether it's um, metabolically unhealthy, or they just want to be more fit in the world, what are just 3 things right off the bat you're like, these are the 3 essential things we got to start with?
Oh, for sure. Great question. Great question. So my thesis for my research is the single most effective thing we can do as human beings in regard to our health is controlling what we put into our mouths. It's not a powder. It's not meditation. It's not grounding. It's not exercise. It's that single most. We can get all the sleep we want, but if we're not taking care of this, it's not going to matter. You can drink all the water you want. You can manifest, you can ground, you can conjure, you can create, you can zen your way to wherever you think you want to go. But like, this is the key right here. So whether it's for business coaching, relationship repair, PTSD, substance abuse, trying to kick a habit like that, somebody just trying to look better, feel better, doesn't matter. I'm going to ask you how your diet is. No, Jake, I'm here for business coaching. Great. How's your diet? No, my wife and I are trying to work on our marriage. Great. How's your diet? No, I'm here. Every time, because this is the gateway. It's the gateway to belief. It's the gateway to understanding. And it's the first place to where you will acknowledge an understanding of importance of that. Because as long as that's being manipulated, you talked about, how we're eating and how we feel based on what we're eating. I had a great conversation with Dr. Stephanie Rimka the other day talking about pleasure. And I actually said at the beginning of our discussion, I said, yeah, we are, as human beings, unfortunately, we have free will working against us and this terrible thing called the tongue working against us. And she corrected me really well. She's like, whoa. The tongue is a fantastically pleasurable
Depends how you use
thing,
it. Yeah.
and she's big in sexual health also. So she's like, I need that tongue. And it was making me blush a lot, but she says it much more eloquently than I do. But nonetheless, that the tongue is a very important and pleasurable muscle that we need. And she kind of rephrased what I was trying to say in the sense that, yeah, our perception of taste and flavor has been so thwarted and manipulated that we are just pleasure seekers for food rather than, out of need. Everything is hedonic as opposed to homeostatic. That's not saying that we have to eat only for utility and purpose. Like, it shouldn't be enjoyable. I love eating steak. I know you love eating steak. We love eating the way we do because it tastes good, it feels good, it makes us feel great. We don't do it because it's miserable. But contrast is that so much of our understanding and familiarity now with eating is totally based on hedonism, on that hedonic, pleasurable sense of give me that easy dopamine, like the chemical engineering of these foods, how they are created in order to induce those reactions. Yeah, that's where we go wrong. That's where pleasure is now being misinterpreted and abused and perverted was the word she used. It's very true. So for me, that first thing is we gotta figure out your diet. I gotta know what's going on in there because I need you to believe yourself. I need you to understand, to take off the mask, to remove the blockages that are existing, the dream killers of substance that you're putting in your body that you won't be able to believe in your business. You won't be able to relate to or understand your partner. You won't be able to walk away from that habit or be able to think and be happy, getting rid of the PTSD, let alone like, look, You touched on it before. Help me get biceps, Tony. Help me get a butt, Tony. Help me become healthier, get stronger, feel better, move better, equates to looking better. You do those in reverse, it's not guaranteed. I've got a master class in looking great and feeling like shit, not being healthy, not being that mobile. Master class. Did it as a fitness model, did it as a bodybuilder. But as opposed to feel better truly by becoming healthier, by getting stronger, by moving better, you're going to inevitably look better. So talking about the diet first, impressing on people, working from the inside out in order to have the outside be a reflection of what's truly within there. And then that you got to trust the process, man. You got to trust the process. You have to show up and you have to be consistent. Those are kind of all three in one, but diet number one, inside out perspective number two, and trust in the process number three.
You got me all jacked up right now. That was a great.
Well, it's
great
football season. It's football season, dude. You know, like there's a lot of great coaches out there. There's a lot of great players out there. So there's plenty of buzzwords and, you know, like people talking about these things. And you see these successful coaches. I was watching, you know, yesterday, the women's softball coach from Oklahoma. Shame on me for not remembering her name, but Patty, shame on me, but they're working on 4 national championships in a row right now. She's got, I think, a total of 9 over there, 15 conference championships, like just 1,500 wins, I believe, something just insanely, like insane stats. And her talking to Pat McAfee yesterday, who was just previously talking to Nick Saban, it's like they all say the same thing. Trust in the process, belief in yourself, commitment to a higher purpose, you know, surrendering to that higher purpose, and just the consistency to stay with it.
Yeah, having a standard, right? Like that's the standard. There's no variation of it. That's the standard for every day.
That's the standard.
But I know you got to take off. Real quick, where can people find you and connect with you if they want to reach out to Life Like Jake?
You said it right there. Every channel, all the socials, everything is Life Like Jake. So YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, online, lifelikejake.com, everywhere and anywhere to get in touch with me. Just look up Life Like Jake and you'll find me.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, appreciate the time. It's great talking to you again. There's so much more to cover. We'll do another one upcoming, but thanks for everybody listening again to another episode of the Primal Foundations podcast.